So, hello everybody. My name is Linda Smith from South Africa, and I'm going to try and pull this event together tonight for everybody. So, just from an overview structure point of view, these new events, this is the first one in the series for Pass It On Network called 50-50. And 50% of the time is talking with some speakers around a subject, and the other 30 minutes is around Q&I, questions and insights. And because we're a big group, we really want you to do a number of things using the chat box, if you can, this evening. Firstly, to tell us who you are, how excited about being here tonight. And then if you have any questions as the different speakers are sharing their value around the magic of networks, if you can maybe just put a Q in front in the chat box and then type in your question. And Osnat is our technical director tonight. Osnat, thank you for pulling the whole event together for us. It's wonderful, actually. In many of the events that I do, I'm used to doing it all, and that's a nightmare. So it really is nice to have a team. It really is great to be here and to have people from all over the world. And so we have Moira, who's going to be talking first, and then Carrie Henley from the US, and Tom Mottle as well from the US, David Aldara from Nigeria, Tom Holloway from the UK. So we've got a real kind of spread of people speaking about different topics. So I will kind of introduce them again as they come up. But Moira, over to you. And again, as people are speaking, if you can make sure that you have a speaker view, and then when we come back to the Q&A, then click back to a gallery view so that we can see everyone. And if you can, please just make sure you keep yourself on mute so that we are respectful to the speakers. So Moira, over to you.
Thank you so much, Linda. I'm really thrilled to be here and to see all these lovely faces around the screen. And as I said, this is a typical, or a fantastic example of networking. I'm really quite stoked today because I've just flown back from Budapest, where I attended a 4-day conference and experienced just the most beautiful example of what networking is all about. And as many of our Pass It On experiences started, it was in fact Jan Heibley who got this particular one going. Jan knew Dana Steinova, and she passed on the contact to me, and I connected with her. And since 2015, we've been growing along with URAG, and URAG is the oldest and longest standing federation of organizations of older people in Europe. They have members in 32 different countries. They worked when there was still the Iron Curtain, and they managed to get through. And at our meeting that we had in Budapest, there were Lithuanians, Ukrainians, Czechs, French, Australians, Danes, and Hungarians themselves, of course. And the title of the conference was, "What is the role of older adults in decision-making processes?" And it was very fascinating. And this is what is so exciting, is to get the different feelings from around the world. And for my money, I would have backed the Lithuanians, but this is not the subject of our conversation today, so we're going to just move on. When at this conference it came to my turn to present the Pass It On network, it happened as it happens very often, and I was told, time is so short, please just cut to the chase. So here I was in this magnificent, really magnificent, gilded local government amphitheater. And I thought the very best thing that I could do would be to read the Hopi Indian poem, because that in fact sums up the actual spirit of what we're doing. And I decided today, as I was going through it, that I would like to read it to you, because in fact, this is really the spirit. And when you read it through carefully, it really does apply to networks. So bear with me. The Hopi Indian elder speaks. You have been telling the people that this is the 11th hour. Now you must go back and tell the people this is the hour. And there are things to be considered. Where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in the right relationship? Where is your water? Do you know your garden? It is time to speak your truth, to create your community. Be good to each other and do not look outside yourself for the leader. This could be a good time. There is a river flowing very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid. They will try to hold on to the shore. They will feel that they are being torn apart and will suffer greatly. Know that the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, keep our eyes open and our heads above the water. See who is in there and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For when we do, our spiritual growth and journey comes to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. We are the ones we have been waiting for. I think that this is a very pertinent poem which translates a spirit, and a spirit that we have certainly been trying to develop. And when he says, gather yourselves, I think that this really does come back to the whole story of networks. I can honestly say that networking has transformed my life and enriched it beyond my very wildest dreams. I've crisscrossed the world in the name of the Pass It On Network and of Old Up, which is my very favorite French association, and met amazing people. I believe that we have in some ways kindled a spark for positive aging in the people that we have met and worked with over the years. Today, we have pioneers on all 5 continents in more than 66 countries. Networks have tremendous potential for achieving what we could never ever achieve alone. When we started, Jan and I, we wanted to grow organically and globally because our subject is of global impact and import. We set a very few, but some very basic principles. And those principles were to have a flat structure and no hierarchy, and to have nodes and not hubs, nodes where energy ebbs and flows, transparency and diversity. And as we've gone along, we have learned the importance of knowing our strengths and finding and seeking partners who can work with us and complement the work that we do. To build trust and not ever to seek control, to share our successes and to learn from each other. The benefits are way beyond expectations. When I think back, our first concern was simply to communicate with our liaisons. We struggled very hard to find a platform. Then a beautiful woman, who'll be talking to you later, came along and introduced us to Zoom. And no longer when we're feeling comfortable with Zoom, then she threw us into the deep end and we went in splattering and saying, no, 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 as we partnered with her to run an international caregivers conference. And there were 18 interviews done, and we did it all ourselves, Jan and Bruce and myself and Gabrielle, and it was all created. And in fact, we have never looked back for that, and we will forever, Carrie, be grateful to you for that wonderful experience. But what has really opened our eyes is the reality of the situation that we, all of us, or most of us around the screen have. We are so privileged to be English speakers. This really gives us access throughout the world. Technology today is totally available to everybody at very low costs. You can find tutorials on the internet to cover absolutely every aspect if you have the time and the energy. And in fact, when you think about networks, the only limiting factor is our imaginations. I could go on and on and on about the benefits of networking, but others are to follow, and we're particularly keen to hear your insights. Let me just sum up by saying my own feeling is that the magic source of networks is energy. It's the kind of energy that boils up in your tummy and comes through because there is something that has to be done. And when you find the people around the world who feel the same way as you, it is pure magic. Linda, over to you now.
Thank you, Moira.
Thank you.
You're absolutely right about that. It does open up pure magic in all of us. And I think back to 8 or 9 years ago when you connected with me via email. And I am forever grateful to you and Jan for all of the opportunities and the people, many of them on this call, that I've met as a result of it. And so thank you for that. So now we're going to hand over to the Queen of Zoom, as Moira called her. And please, in the chat box, if you have any questions, remember, use a capital Q and or an insight or something that you want to share with us. And please just make sure you're on mute so that we all can enjoy the conversation. So over to Carrie, who's going to share with us about what she learned about digital intimacy through the process of COVID and beyond. So Carrie, over to you.
You mute, Kate.
Look at that, a rookie mistake. Wow. I'm just so excited. I forgot that I had been politely on mute. I'm so excited to be here today. It's such a honor, really, and a privilege to be with so many of you and to reflect on the journey that brought us to where we are at this moment in time. So I want to begin by recognizing Jan and Moira, who were incredible mentors for me and helped introduce me to the entire industry of longevity and aging. And they took in my curiosity and my interest and opened up the doors to so many of you that I've had an opportunity to connect with and be with. And I was reflecting back on our very first gatherings that we were on audio. We actually didn't have a video platform initially. And I think we tried 4 different audio call teleconferences. And so what a rich time that the past 5 years have created in technology. That 5 years ago, audio was kind of what people were doing because you only had Skype for video. And even that didn't work very well. If you remember, it would make a funny noise when you were trying to call someone. You had to be their friend first and you couldn't see more than one person. And truly, it was because of the Pass It On network and our attempts to find platforms to connect a global audience that I discovered Zoom and said, this is it. You guys are going to believe this. You can see everyone on a screen at the same time. It was a revelation. And I did have one of my biggest revelations as a facilitator. I've spent my life facilitating and teaching, and I used to teach audio summits and global conferences where we would meet by audio. And we did indeed co-collaborate and create a global summit on aging and caregiving. And so many of you contributed, and Moira and Jan and Judy and Bruce and Linda helped shape and craft the messaging. But it wasn't until we were done that I realized so many hadn't had a chance to meet each other. So it was only those of us who had been conducting the interviews who had this rich story. And so I decided to throw a party for all of us to meet each other on Zoom. And everyone on the team thought I was crazy, but it was a novel experience to have everyone come on the call. And I still have a recording of this clip, and I use this clip all the time, of showing what happened the first time we all went onto the gallery view with Zoom. and got to see each other's faces, and the rich emotion of astonishment and recognition of old friends and people that you have admired or seen in conferences but had never met in person was so palpable. It was so real. And it was Peter Toit who coined the term digital intimacy later, maybe a couple of years later, when I said that is exactly what happened in that moment. There was a sense of intimacy that we felt by seeing each other, and it was a revolution. And from there, I continued to develop these opportunities for people to come together. And boy, was it a slog, as Moira had said. If you might recall, before the pandemic, how many of you had ever even been on Zoom? Many had never. And it wasn't until we were forced to that we started using these virtual tools to connect with our family, with our coworkers, and began to see the magic. And the story continues. I'm so glad that Margie and Linda and Jan and everyone are on the call, that after we had this virtual conference, we all met at an actual physical conference. And we had a chance to come together and get to know each other. And it was, again, a moment of awestruck intimacy to be able to see someone in person, say, oh, you're so much taller. I'm very, very tall. And so is Margie. And how wonderful was it for the two of us to hug each other as two tall women, and to meet Dieter in person, and to spend time with Linda and Jan and have lunches and to be together. And so the message really is to think deeply about what a gift it is to be the elders in the world right now with this technology at your fingertips. And I know that having the connection globally, I mean, Mebs is on the call. It's so hilarious. Mebs was on an event I just did on Saturday with my work with the Modern Elder Academy, as was Helen, I think, was on there too. And so we get to see each other across different networks. And I serve on the board of the IFA, which is a global network on aging. And there's nothing that gives me greater hope and greater comfort than to engage with people from around the world. David, Mark, Oldari, how wonderful to see you again. And how wonderful to have spent some time helping to bring about a conference on aging in Nigeria. And so I wanted to leave that message for you that, when will I get to Nigeria? I don't know. But yet to have this rich connection, and I know the day that I do get to Nigeria, the first person I'll be calling is David to say hello. And it will be a warm, rich, deep connection, as if we had known each other for many years. And the day I can get to South Africa, I will go straight to Linda's house, and we will have tea, and we will connect as sisters. And so I invite you to think about the power of that, to use these virtual tools to build these connections together and to treasure them, because they are as deep and rich for many as their family, and for some even more so than their family. And then when the moment comes when you may have the opportunity to come together in person, particularly now in the time of COVID, have you noticed how rich it is to be in person with someone that you love, to just never take for granted how wonderful it is to see how someone moves and to hold their hand and to share a meal together, something we hadn't really, really imagined would be so precious. And I'm so happy you read the poem that started it all between Jan and Moira at a conference, this click that happened between them, and yet they built a movement from two countries virtually. Their passion and their drive to use virtual tools like email and phone calls to build a movement when they weren't able to be together every day, and to bring all of you together who retained this power over the years. So I was mostly here to kind of pour it back for all of you to take that moment to really stop and appreciate the gifts of bringing us together, that social isolation is one of the most dangerous predators for aging, that it can take 7 years off your life to feel socially isolated. worse than smoking cigarettes or diabetes or obesity. And it's not just being physically social isolated, but it's feeling isolated. And so as ambassadors with the Pass It On Network, you truly are exemplifying that capacity to ease that sense of social isolation, to know we're not alone. And that you have each other across a global family is such a gift. I'm so glad you posted the Hopi poem. Thank you for doing that, Osnat, so you all can have it and to read it again. So that is my words and just feedback and gifts back to you. And certainly if you have specific questions at all, the work that I do is to continue building bridges virtually and in person, to continue teaching others how to share your gifts with all of these virtual tools. So I'm happy to chat offline as well if anyone has questions. But thank you again. Thank you so much, Linda. Back to you.
Thanks so much, Carrie. And I'm reminded as you were speaking about Professor Linda Grattan in the 100-Year Life, about relationships and networks are one of the intangible assets. And that longevity, if you want to have a healthy longevity, those are critical intangible assets. And this certainly, what your message is, it's about the fun, it's about the connections, and I am certainly grateful for the relationship that we have built up. And so the next person to speak is going to be David from Nigeria. David and I met at the World Healthy Aging Conference in South Africa I think it was 2015, David. And so over to you to talk about the power of WhatsApp as a networking tool. Thank you for joining us from Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm so glad. I want to say a big thank you to Linda Smith. You've done so well over the years. In 2015, you were the one that connected me to, I call her my boss, Moira Allen and John Ibe. Without you, Linda, I wouldn't get to the step where I am today. So I have to say a big thank you to you, Linda. I'm so grateful for that. And from Moira, she's been more like a mother to me. I don't know. Well, whatever step I have taken and wherever I am in terms of exposure now to aging, in the aging industry, I think Moira played a good role through the networking. I remember when Moira told me, "Oh, David, you know that there's a bursary for common age. Would you like to go? I want you to put in." And that's how I found myself in the UK and Reading, and networking with so many other people and so on and so forth. But streaming down to WhatsApp, I sort of told her, I said, "Moira, have you heard anything about WhatsApp?" He said, "Oh, what? How does it work?" I said, "Okay, we're going to do something." But I have my colleagues here from Nigeria, and I want to recognize them also because they are part of my WhatsApp network group. We have Mrs. Lawal, we have the former Minister for Women Affairs in Nigeria, Mama Ayom. We have Philomena also of Ascopin and so on and so forth. We are all on a WhatsApp group. There's a WhatsApp group that we created for ourselves called Leaders in Aging. And through that, we were able to connect with ourselves. I mean, I didn't even know that WhatsApp has the power of video conferencing. I never knew that. I never knew that you can even record your messages, send images, and so on and so forth. And, it makes things so easy, especially when Moira normally sends her newsletter. Let me talk about that newsletter a little. You see, when Moira sends a newsletter, from the side of the world where I come from, we are not so used to Gmail, email, Yahoo, and so on and so forth. So what I do is to convert whatever newsletter she has, and I will print it out on a PDF format and send it to my WhatsApp group. And by God's grace, I've been able to set up nothing less than 20 WhatsApp group networking all over the world. Over 20. in which I am the sole administrator and I have some co-admin with me. I have some of my colleagues who we went to the same secondary school, Osagio and Abulele, is here also, and is on this group with us. So if not for networking via WhatsApp, I'm telling you the truth, would have just been in the dark. So I want to say a big thank you to Moira. I want to say a big thank you to Tom Holloway of the University of Third Age. Tom is going to speak, if not for him also. Now he began to teach me what the WhatsApp group is all about and so on and so forth. And I think we need to harness more on WhatsApp, even though it has limited participants. It's just about 256 compared to Telegram. And as time goes on with Pass It On Network, I think we're going to shift from WhatsApp group to Telegram. I want to stop here and give others the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David. Living also on the African continent, I understand the data costs and the mobile challenges are very different. But I attended a mobile conference in 2004, I think it was, and mobile has opened up the power for Africa in so many ways. And when data becomes cheaper, communication, banking, all of the wonderful things that can happen. So well done for what you've done using the tools that you can. And the wonderful networks through the Pass It On network. And now we're going to hand over to Tom Mottle from the US, who's going to talk more from a technical side on networks and networking. So over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Linda. Carrie and Moira certainly provided the more inspirational and aspirational aspects and perspectives on networks, which is so important. And David, you spoke to very briefly, but the issues of connecting people and the tools that you can use. And the background that I bring is such that I'd like to talk about a couple of other metaphors in addition to magic that sort of, as I've thought about this meeting, came to mind and relate more to how you use networks, what has to be done, and how do you get things done using networks, which has been my experience over the last decade in putting on a variety of programs and workshops and conferences and meetings. So if you would allow me for a moment to screen share. I put together this Venn diagram, which shows the intersecting circles, which you're used to seeing. And the magic, as I said, relates, as I see it, to the inspiration and aspirational aspects of networks, which are so important to bringing people together and creating changes and movements as they relate to the aging population. But the two additional metaphors that I'd like to introduce to think about and certainly influence what has happened with me are the social gathering and the marketplace. And in terms of social gathering, what I'm talking about is the more or less one-on-one, although it can be many-on-one through Zooming, building of relationships and recognition of what you're about, and in that process, learning from others, developing knowledge and understanding. The marketplace might seem a little strange to some in that marketplaces are typically thought of in terms of goods and services. And I'm thinking here in terms of what goes on in terms of the transactions and resources that are involved with networks. And rather than goods and services, I want to think in terms of ideas, strategies, and labor. So let me leave that at that and just talk about a little bit about what I've done in the last couple of years relative to a variety of meetings and programs and so forth that I've been involved in putting on. Over the last 2 years, I was involved in putting on a series of programs under the title Future of Aging Program Series. The most recent one was in June, which addressed housing, and the title of that was Finding Your Way to the Right Home. And it involved concepts related to the choices and issues people have and also the limitations. And that I was very fortunate because of networking and networks to have registration of about 440 people, of which about half, which is typically the number of about 220, showed up. two earlier programs, the first of which in March of 2020, Jan actually participated in as a panelist and featured Louise Aronson, the author of the book Elderhood, Reinventing Aging, Transforming Medicine, and Reimagining Life. And we talked about ageism and a variety of issues related to that. The second program took place and that was an in-person program held here in the Boston area at WBUR, the NPR station venue. And the second program in November was a collaboration with Boston College. And again, networking. One of the people from Boston College came to that first program, approached me and said, we'd like to help you put on one of these programs. And the next one in the series, which was developed by a committee, which through networking and that kind of activity, I was able to pull together a group to create a proposal for the 4 programs, and 3 have been done. And the November program was on meaning and purpose in later life. That was based on Zoom. That was a webinar-based program, not because of COVID, that was pre-COVID, but because it drew in speakers from around the country. Beyond those programs, and the 4th will be a program focusing on intergenerational relationship, which I saw Peter Whitehouse here earlier will be involved with. I put on a series of workshops and meetings and conferences in the 2017-2019 period, which I would not have been able to bring them about because my background in this area of gerontology related kind of work is only the last decade. The prior decades, first in academia for about a decade and then in the world of for-profits and large government organizations, led me to a broad understanding of networks and networking, which led me to those perspectives that I tried to convey in that Venn diagram. The workshops and meetings I put on were titled Community Networks for Aging in Place, CNAP. And the first 2 were in person, and the third was in person, but I was able to get a grant through the state legislature in Massachusetts, which is actually an earmark, which I had never engaged with. And again, through networking and connections I'd made, I figured out how to get a grant as an earmark to a state agency budget. We connected LaSalle College, at that time, LaSalle University now, with the community college in the western part of Massachusetts, Berkshire Community College, and Cape Cod Community College. And that was using Zoom. That's what the funding from the state legislature was about, was to provide funding to demonstrate the utility of Zoom technology. I used it in that meeting and a number of other meetings. So through these programs and through these meetings, none of which I would have been able to bring about without networking to connect me with people and the networks to create the broader recognition and participation. I guess I'll leave it with that, and we can talk about this later in whatever level of detail you want. And so I'll pass it back to you, Linda.
Thanks so much, Tom. I do agree that I think COVID has brought some amazing opportunities for us to connect and learn across the world. And I'm again grateful for these networks, because sitting at the tip of Africa, for me, that was one of the hardest things, was to learn and understand what was happening elsewhere in the world. And so again, I think the magic of networks from a learning perspective is really fantastic. And I watched that aging conference of yours on where to live, and it was fantastic. So well done, Tom. Can put your questions in the box, and maybe Osnat, you want to maybe put up the survey, which we're going to be doing straight after Tom. So the survey is going to be coming up in the chat box, and what we suggest you do is that you click on the survey and open it up in a separate screen so that you can answer the survey after we finished on the hour. So don't go and do the survey while we're still busy, but just make sure that you capture the survey link while we're still on the call.
Great idea. Coming up.
Let's, okay, there we have a question up here so far. Osnat, can you help me maybe just on the question side? And are there any questions that people have? And I think it's better to move back to gallery view while we're just doing a question so that you can see everybody.
So if everybody can click on the upper right-hand corner, there's a little button that's called View, and move to Gallery View. I find this question very uplifting. With this amazing network we now have, this is from, I'm sorry, Mebs Remtula. I'm not pronouncing it right, but forgive me. With this amazing network we now have, how do we harness this asset to live and engage in purposeful life in areas of lifelong learning and giving back for social impact in communities we live in? I think this is kind of the question we're struggling with. So maybe Linda and Moira and the other speakers have any insight.
So,
Well,
go for it, Moira.
no, I was just going to say very, very quickly that I think one of the important things is that we've adopted a kind of learn as you go along process. And that was Kathy Bailey who introduced that to us. And we think it's excellent. And also the whole thing of working with peers. You know, it's so much easier to learn from each other. And we all know a little bit. And I think that's a very important aspect of our network. So maybe to foster, first of all, to find out what everybody wants to learn, and then just to foster small groups to move along. That would be my input. And I'm sure Jan has words to say on that.
Jan, you can take yourself off mute.
Delighted. Thank you for, I feel that the education systems are changing so rapidly. And I think that the COVID has really caused stimulated what was already happening. I feel now that it's not a matter of going out and getting liberal arts degrees and bachelor's degrees and master's degrees and PhDs. It's a matter of having a digital record, a portfolio of what your strengths are and what skills you need to be able to accomplish what you want to do, and to then find the short course, the certificate program, the internship, the mentorship that will, which are all going to be out there available. And the main point is, can you can we have a global system of certification that recognizes the value of those very specific skills-based programs? I would love to see a whole life cycle, the new map of life, where the learning that starts at the beginning in the home and in the workplace and in the community, as well as in the classroom, is recognized and taken account of. We have too much inequity now in every system, and I think that this new system of education, lifelong learning, which includes informal learning as well as the formal systems, really is on a track toward moving across boundaries and encouraging everyone to learn. And then the question is, how do we make sure that the systems, the employer system, the government system, takes account of the value of that learning? That's from my perspective, a big question. So I was addressing the lifelong learning part of that comment that was made.
Usnet gave me permission to inject a brief comment following your remarks, Jen. And that is, next week, there'll be a conference in Europe which José Grikar is involved in developing, talking about e-education and e-learning, part of his Emeritus Professors Network and the Active Aging Network. And I will, as I did here, do a brief 3-minute discussant commentary. And the only point I wanted to make is the papers next week are all about e-learning and e-education from a push standpoint. And the comment I'm going to make is that there's so much to be done from a pull standpoint relative to what's the term, if you look it up on Wikipedia, is called eldergogy or gerontology, namely as opposed to pedagogy for younger people, and that learning mechanism, the mechanisms and the issues related to older people learning has to really be addressed.
Thanks,
There are-
Tom.
Yeah. No,
There's
just
two other comments there in the questions, I guess. One is a comment from Rick Moody about, and check it out in the chat. Anybody who's interested in positive aging, he has a newsletter about human values and aging, and there's an email address there, so you can contact him to request it. There are, okay, I'm going to go for these questions from Iom Josephine Aneni. I feel lost in the aging sector when I don't see or hear anyone talking about dementia, which affects some elderly people. Age is a risk factor for dementia.
Anybody who wants to comment? Maybe Margie van Sale, are you there? Margie Chapman?
Linda, I would like an opportunity to try again. I've reset my machine. Let's see what we can do.
no.
Tom, we've got too few minutes left because we want to finish on the hour. Let's rather keep it over and give you good value
Okay.
at the next event.
I understand.
Okay. Margie?
Just a comment, yes. Aging is a risk factor for dementia, and yeah, I think that we need to raise the topic of dementia as often as we can, and raise people's awareness around living with dementia, and that people can live well with dementia, and there's too little understanding about it, and fear and angst. So yes, I agree with Josephine that we have to focus on creating more awareness around dementia.
Moira?
No, I simply wanted to say I also totally agree with that. It is a huge problem that has to be addressed. Simply, our network, which is the Pass It On network, tends to concentrate on the positive aspects of positive aging and being prepared for that. There seems to be, there's a great deal being done for dementia, and we have a different angle on it. We're totally sympathetic to it, of course. But in the conference I've just been to now, you get the same feeling because we were addressed by a whole lot of politicians in different municipal and government areas, and the focus basically is on the elder that is dependent. Whereas statistics show that between 4 and 8% of the population in most countries, I can quote for France, they reckon that it's 8%. In other countries, they say it's 4%, that people are totally dependent. Whereas there are, let's just say, largely speaking, 90% of the elderly population, the older people, who are perfectly, well, not perfectly, but who are valid and can continue their lives. And that is the area that we have chosen to concentrate on. And we have great difficulty in trying to find some funding to help our activities. But this is really the area that we try to focus on in order that people remain active and positive, and that is good for everybody because it prevents the onset of dementia. It doesn't stop it, but it certainly prevents the onset.
And I think that wherever we are in the world, there are probably organizations involved in all the aging factors, from the positive aging to the dementia. And what I have found from a South African perspective is to be in touch with those thought leaders or leaders of organizations around the whole of the aging process, and to get involved if that's an area, you know, that you want to, and to look for thought leaders elsewhere in the world. It's because there are so many pieces now to longevity. And so everybody has a bit of a niche market, and you've got to find the area that's of greatest interest to you. And as Moira says, the Pass It On network is very much about positive aging.
But, you know, dementia.
Hasnet?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Peter Whitehouse. Sorry. Yes, dementia needs reimagining. It's not something out there separate from the rest of life. Being positive in life will help prevent dementia, as Moira said, but we need to really reevaluate that label and all the power and negativity associated with it. It needs a positive lens, in my point.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Peter.
I totally agree. Totally.
Osnet, are there any more questions?
Yeah, if there's one, there's a really interesting note from Ingrid Ayers about a really important network, and I'm going to read it, and I would like Jeff Rubin to respond to it quickly. Ingrid is saying, I think what might be useful for many could well be related to grandparenting online. Technology offers opportunity for families to keep in touch, and maintaining family contacts is so important for all of us. And that's a network that is an internal network. And just this past week, Jeff had a guest that spoke about this. And Jeff, like in 3 sentences, maybe you can say something about it.
Yes, thank you. We started a group called the North American Coalition to Address Ageism. And we had a speaker on, Kerry Byrne, who started a business for long-distance grandparents. And the conversation we had was about the value of grandparents and what role they can play if they're not in their grandchildren's lives every day. Fascinating conversation, fascinating way to look at how we can connect. And I highly recommend you looking her up, Kerry Burns, Byrnes. And it just speaks to the heart of what we're talking about, which is the power of one, that individuals, whatever age, can make a difference.
Thanks, Jeff. Jan?
Yes, I just want to comment on the fact that our December 50-50 conversation will be on the topic of grandparenting. And we are inviting Kerry to be present there, Kerry Burns, as well as a couple of other people who do grandmother. Our lead will be Valerie from Wales with Grandma and Me. So absolutely, big topic, good topic. And I hope that before the end of the hour, we could mention the topics for the next 2 in October and November as well.
Yes, I'm going to talk about those at the end.
Right.
BJ, I'm going to give you a quick 1 minute.
2 minutes.
Thank you, Linda. Just to tell you that in the Southwest Indian Ocean region, DMOA, of which I'm the Deputy Director, we are establishing a network of DMOA NGOs that we have initiated in the islands of the Southwest Indian Ocean region. Apart from Mauritius, we have Madagascar, Réunion Island, Rodrigue, the Seychelles, and hopefully Morocco. So sort of saying that we want to stand as one voice, a regional voice, that we have the energy, the force, and the strength to express ourselves in different international forums, to speak of the UN Convention, to speak of the AU Protocol. So there is a network in the making, actually. It is, let's say, 75% done. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you,
Thank
Vijay.
you.
And I think that kind of leads to, you know, every part of the world has amazing assets around networks and relationships. And so in the closing chat, if you want to add anything that you feel is of value to others, because the chat box is going to be shared with everybody. So you'll be able to get the links and the comments from the different people, which will be of value to you if you have a specific leaning. We also, just a reminder about the survey link that is in the chat box. If you can make sure you copy and paste it into your browser so that you can complete that for the PION team. And then, as Jan said, we have some 50-50 events coming up now once a month. And so the next one is on the 18th of October with Richard Adler on digital inclusion for older adults. Definitely will be on that one and look forward to that. And then we have Helen Hirsch-Spencer on the 15th of November on intergenerational dialogue. I think that will also be an absolutely fascinating conversation. And then, as Jan said, on the 13th of December, one around parenting and grandmas and with Val Wood-Geiger. So if you can kind of keep those dates open for a similar type event. And are there any final points, Moira, from you or from Jan as we get to a close?
Just very quickly, Jacqueline Stock, would you like to just speak up about the 1st of October events?
Yes, I just put something in the chat box, and I would be sending the materials to everybody. I think some of you are already registered for it. On October 1st, it's the UN International Day of Older Persons, and it's in Geneva. There's a session tomorrow, and on October 1st, the Vienna NGO Committee on Aging has an event, and followed by an event from the New York NGO Committee on Aging, and it's about equity for all ages. And the program is very interesting, and I'll be sending the materials to be distributed to those of you online tonight. I just posted it that I would be doing that, and I would appreciate it if you could distribute them. Okay. Thank you.
Jacqueline.
Thank you. So thank you, Moira and Jan, for your amazing vision all those years ago, and for this wonderful network and the relationships that everybody has built up. They are the most beautiful asset that we have in our lives. And the one thing that I've learned is wherever you go, you take your relationships with you. And so they need trust and time and commitment, but they certainly add massive value to our lives. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Osnat and Andy, and to all the speakers for being with us tonight and just inspiring us. We appreciate you all.
Super.
Have a good
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
time. If it's morning, afternoon, or night, sleep well.